Everyone says that Glock is the ultimate handgun for almost any scenario. Yet some of us have seen firsthand how a revolver can shine in ways a Glock cannot. There are plenty of polymer pistols around these days, and people keep telling new buyers to pick the same thing. In this video, we'll talk about why a revolver can be a better choice than a Glock, especially if you value long-term reliability, ease of maintenance, and the ability to keep it going when conditions are less than ideal. Now, some of this goes against the grain of what's popular, but I believe there's more to firearms ownership than following trends. I'm speaking from the perspective of a neighbor or friend who wants everyone in the group to have something that can be counted on day after day. Now, I've got nothing against polymer pistols. I even carry a SIG P365 most times, so I understand their appeal. I just happen to also believe that it's worth considering a traditional wheelgun in a world that puts so much emphasis on capacity and speed. So, let's take a closer look at the reasons why I see revolvers as a top pick, especially for those who live with a preparedness mindset and want a trusty sidearm. Number 1. You keep your brass every time. A revolver is about resourcefulness. Each time a round is fired, the spent casing stays in the cylinder until you open and eject it. That simple fact makes a world of difference for folks who reload. It doesn't matter if you're busy at an outdoor range or alone in the desert, you won't have to scramble on the ground looking for casings. The brass is right there in your hand, ready to pocket and reuse. When conditions are less controlled, like a remote campsite or a makeshift shooting spot, recovering brass from a semi-auto can feel like treasure hunting. Some of it might get lost in tall grass or under a rock. It's very common, but a revolver completely prevents that hassle. I've shared ammo and components with friends who aim to stay prepared, and every piece of brass counts. Now, I do realize that not everyone reloads their own ammo, but I see it as a skill well worth adding to a preparedness arsenal. If you reload your own ammo, you conserve resources and extend your training opportunities. Some people may be content with just dry firing, but you get to practice with live ammo for much longer. Also, if local stores are short on ammunition, or if prices skyrocket, even a bucket of spent brass and a reloading press can keep you running. The revolver supports that plan by holding onto your brass every time. And even if you just can't be bothered to reload your own ammo, you can always sell that spent brass. Number 2. Psychological deterrence still works. There's a reason certain images are associated with intimidation, and a large frame wheelgun is one of those. When someone sees that barrel, they know it's no joke, especially if it's a .357 Magnum or bigger. Many folks are used to the common shape of a polymer pistol, so a stainless steel revolver can definitely catch them off guard. Also, the muzzle flash on some revolver cartridges can be dramatic, and the sound they produce under covered ranges or in open fields is quite distinct. In a tense scenario, presentation alone might de-escalate a threat before a shot's even fired. Now, I'm not saying that brandishing a gun is a cure-all, and we should all definitely follow the legal guidelines for our area. I'm saying that a sudden appearance of a big bore revolver can change someone's thought process. This effect can be especially useful in a wilderness or homestead situation where you face not only human threats but also unpredictable animals. A strong report and a noticeable muzzle blast can discourage further aggression. I don't rely on that factor alone, but you gotta consider every single advantage in a scenario where you might only have a few seconds to stop trouble. Revolvers offer a compelling presence that sometimes tips the balance. Number 3. A real tool, not a disposable gadget. There's something about solid steel construction that brings peace of mind. A revolver has that heft and durability that feels like you could hand it to your grandkids one day and it would still work. Many polymer pistols are reliable, but they involve parts that might need more frequent inspection, replacement, or specific maintenance. A dual-action, single-action revolver has a very straightforward mechanical design made mostly of metal parts that can withstand years of firing without extensive overhauls. If you're somebody who might be off the grid or simply wants a weapon that can handle rugged conditions, the all-metal nature of a revolver is appealing. It's not just about the glamour or tradition alone. It's about having something that won't crack or degrade if it experiences extreme temperatures or accidental rough handling. I see it as ideal for anyone who prioritizes self-reliance. When you're miles away from a gunsmith and you don't have a plastic replacement part on hand, you don't want your sidearm to become a paperweight. A well-maintained revolver can soldier on year after year with minimal fuss. Let me know if you're in agreement with me or if you think I'm off base on this. You gotta let me know in the comments, because I'm truly curious how other folks value long-term mechanical strength. That sort of feedback helps shape our discussions on this channel. Alright folks, you've made it this far. You're clearly as obsessed with revolvers as we are, so why not make it official? Hit that subscribe button and join the club. It's way easier than finding .357 Magnum ammo on sale, and it takes less effort than pulling a double-action trigger. Plus, unlike a revolver, it won't go off by accident. Number 4. Ammo versatility in one gun. Now, some revolvers are chambered in .357 Magnum, which also lets you fire .38 Special. That means you get 2 different levels of power in the same platform. For practice and training, .38 Special can help keep recoil manageable, and for defensive or hunting scenarios, .357 delivers a potent punch. That kind of flexibility really comes in handy if ammo ever gets hard to find. Say you stumble on a box of .38 Special for cheap, you can grab it and still use the same revolver you trust for heavier loads. And if you didn't know, some revolvers actually let you swap cylinders. The Heritage Rough Rider, for example, can come with both a .22 long rifle and .22 Magnum cylinder. The Taurus 692 is another good one. It's a 7-shooter with cylinders for .357 Magnum, .38 Special, and 9mm. And it also lets you run .380 ACP with moon clips. Then there's the Charter Arms Double Dog, which is a bit smaller, so it only offers 5 shots, but it's got a similar setup. One cylinder for .357 or .38, and another for 9mm and .380. That's some handy stuff if you want more options and flexibility. All these mean you don't need as many different guns to cover various roles. You can adjust your load to the mission. For small pests or plinking, use lighter ammo, and for larger threats, use hotter rounds. That approach fits the mindset of a prepper who wants to streamline their gear. Less complication, more reliability. If you like the .357 Magnum cartridge, you know just how effective it can be on medium game or for self-defense. Having that authority in your back pocket while still retaining the option to shoot less expensive rounds is valuable. It means more training and more confidence for the time when you truly need a gun to protect your life or property. Number 5. No nonsense learning curve. A brand new shooter might feel overwhelmed by magazines, slides, safeties, and the other details in a semi-automatic pistol. Now, a revolver is much simpler to learn. You open the cylinder, load your rounds, close it, and you're set. In a critical situation, you won't fumble with a magazine release or wonder why your slide is forward. This simplicity appeals to anyone who might only practice once in a while, or to someone who needs a backup weapon that a family member could use in an emergency. The revolver doesn't have a steep manual of arms process. You just press the trigger. Even the trigger pull itself, especially in double action, is much more straightforward, though heavier. But that heaviness can be a safety feature in and of itself. By focusing less on potential malfunctions and more on firing fundamentals, some people become proficient much more quickly. Now, I'm not saying folks shouldn't train on more complex platforms, but if the goal is to have a sidearm that requires minimal orientation for the user, a revolver is a prime candidate. A simpler design means fewer steps to remember, especially under stress, and that can be a factor in a high-pressure moment when muscle memory rules the day. It's worth keeping that in mind if you're preparing for unexpected challenges. Number 6. Built-in safety for real life. Many revolvers rely on a long double-action pull that reduces the risk of accidental discharges. You can't just brush the trigger and send a round downrange. Some new shooters appreciate that sense of safety. In a world where a single mistake can cause a tragedy, this feature can be quite the relief. Glocks and other striker-fire pistols have triggers that can be quite light by comparison, and while they aren't inherently unsafe, they do demand strict discipline. A double-action revolver demands a deliberate action. That's why some preppers who have kids or less experienced individuals in the house choose revolvers. If someone picks it up and starts to yank on the trigger without intending harm, that long, heavy pull might give them time to realize their mistake or prompt them to handle the firearm more carefully. This is especially relevant in tense situations where your adrenaline spikes and fine motor skills might degrade. You're much less likely to unintentionally squeeze off a round if your finger is resting on a trigger that requires a conscious press. Of course, training is still critical, but mechanical features can provide an added layer of protection that fits neatly into a preparedness lifestyle. It's not about complacency, it's about making every effort to avoid a negligent discharge when lives are on the line. Number 7. Maintenance you can trust in the field. There are times when a firearm spends a long stretch in a pack or at a remote location. A revolver can sit for months or even years and still function without the same lubrication concerns that some semi-autos have. It can get dusty or experience temperature swings, but it usually remains steady. The design is less sensitive to grime around feed ramps or magazine springs. If you're far from a cleaning bench or lacking specialized tools, a revolver is easier to keep running. Basic checks and a bit of oil in the right places can maintain it for a significant length of time. That's reassuring if your plan involves extended stays away from civilization. Some folks carry cleaning kits everywhere and swap out recoil springs regularly. Others might not have that luxury. I believe in regular maintenance, but I also value the type of firearm that can forgive a bit of neglect when life gets busy. When you're traveling off-grid or simply storing a backup weapon, you want a gun to work when you pull it out, even if you haven't tended to it in weeks. Revolvers fulfill that role well, and that's a point in their favor for those who value rugged dependability. Number 8. Mechanical simplicity equals fewer failures. A revolver has fewer pathways for mechanical failure. You don't have to worry about magazines failing to feed or slides not fully going into battery. If a round misfires, you can just pull the trigger again and the cylinder rotates to a fresh cartridge. A user doesn't need to apply special techniques to avoid stovepipes or double feeds. A revolver's mechanical simplicity can be a lifesaver in a dire moment. With a semi-automatic pistol, there's a good chance you'll deal with a failure to feed or a failure to eject at a very inconvenient time. Proper training does cover how to clear those malfunctions, but real-life stress can make these actions much harder to pull off. A revolver is less prone to that kind of problem. There's a reason people have trusted them in harsh conditions for decades now. I'm not dismissing the reliability of Glocks or similar pistols. I'm just highlighting that the revolver's design prevents fewer variables when a shot absolutely must happen. If you rely on your sidearm to protect your homestead, your campsite, or your family, that assurance is no small thing. The mechanical process is straightforward, so it's less susceptible to operator error or unusual ammo quirks. Number 9. Modern gunfights are overhyped. 6 can be plenty. A common critique of revolvers is the limited capacity. Most double-action revolvers hold 6 or 7 shots, which sounds tiny compared to the double-digit count in many semi-autos. In actual defensive situations, though, the average number of rounds fired is often far lower than the capacity of a modern pistol. Many encounters are settled in just a handful of shots or less. Now, that's not guaranteed, but the likelihood that you'll need to empty multiple magazines is pretty low. A well-aimed .357 round can change the outcome swiftly. If you practice shot placement and stay calm, the revolver might give you all the performance you need. It's true that capacity can be an asset, sure, but it's not always the deciding factor in an encounter. If you're more concerned about wilderness threats like a wild animal on your property or unpredictable elements near your bug-out location, a heavy-hitting revolver in .44 Magnum or even .454 Castle can end the problem quickly. Running with fewer but harder-hitting shots kind of forces you to slow down and make them count, and that's not a bad habit, especially when ammo isn't exactly cheap or easy to find these days. And let's be honest, if a situation calls for more than 6 rounds, you're probably better off grabbing your AR-15 anyway. No Glock's gonna match what an AR or even a solid PDW with a 30-round mag can do in that kind of fight. Do you got a different take though? Drop it in the comments. We're all here to share what we know and learn from each other. Number 10. It works well when nothing else will. Sometimes people operate in cold climates, wet conditions, or off-balance positions where a perfect stance isn't possible. Revolvers tend to operate reliably through all of that. They're not bothered by limp wristing, which can cause a semi-automatic pistol to fail. They also don't need the shooter to manage recoil in a specific way for the slide to cycle properly. If your wrist is hurt or if your clothing is snagged, you still have a good chance of firing a revolver effectively. In a crisis, that characteristic can be the difference between success and failure. Picture a situation where your hand is muddy or cut and you can't apply ideal pressure. That's when a revolver's design really shines. The cylinder rotates mechanically with every trigger press, so a weak grip won't stop it from functioning. It's that kind of peace of mind that serious preppers appreciate because not everything always goes according to plan. There might be extreme temperatures, limited visibility, or compromised body positions. No matter the case, the revolver endures. It doesn't care about a slightly bent wrist or less than perfect posture. When conditions are harsh, the wheelgun remains a dependable friend that's ready to fire the next round without missing a beat. Alright, that's a wrap. Now, I don't know about you, but I always feel a lot better knowing my firearm can hold up when things get messy or unpredictable. And personally, I think a good revolver beats out most semi-autos, including Glocks, in much more ways than people give it credit for. That said, why limit yourself? Ain't nothing wrong with having both in the toolbox. But what is your take? Think revolvers have the edge, or are you on Team Glock all the way? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. And hey, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next one. Appreciate you watching.
This is Threat to Survival. Prepare today, thrive tomorrow. Embrace the threat to survival.